Okay, so I want to go ahead and get us started because we do have an hour of lots of great conversations. And I'm so super excited about this first Intentional Conversations podcast of 2021. We decided to kick the year off with having all of our guest hosts to be members of the NWC team. And so I'm super excited for you to meet the wonderful team that I have the honor and the privilege of working with every single day. They inspire me to go harder, particularly in this space because they care deeply about it as well. And so I'm going to take you through just a couple slides before we bring on our special guest today and allow you to hear from them. And so Natasha, if you will kindly go to the next slide for me, please. I always like to make sure that you are aware of who is going to be our guest co-host for the upcoming weeks. One of the things we're doing different in 2021, which we'll talk about a little bit further, is Intentional Conversations is not only just going to be hosted by me, but we have capable teammates at NWC that are also going to be leading the discussions, joining me as we hold space for many different wonderful practitioners to share with us their knowledge and their wisdom. And so on January 15th, next Friday, Viola Goodman, who you'll have a chance to meet today, she is our Chief of Staff. She is going to be co-hosting along with me as we have Raquel Harris join us. And Raquel leads up the diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts for Milliken, which is a global company. And we're going to be offering insights on starting a DEI strategy, which she has done from ground zero and continues to build that program. And also practicing while Black in the midst of social unrest and politically charged climate. And so that will be definitely a timely conversation. That's January 15th, so join us then. And then also following that, we're going to have Natasha Portskova, another one of my wonderful colleagues. She's a DEI manager with NWC, and she and I are going to be co-hosting as we welcome Audra Jenkins, and Audra Jenkins is the Chief Diversity Officer for Randstad, and Randstad is also one of our clients. And so we're going to be talking about, again, all things DEI, how it intersects and how it can be leveraged to create impact. I know that she has a great passion for AI, automation intelligence, and particularly the impact that's having on women in the workplace. So I really look forward to her sharing her thoughts with us on January the 22nd. Okay, next slide, please. Now, it gives me great pleasure for you to be able to meet the team. And because I know these individuals quite well, I certainly do not want to deny you of the opportunity of understanding their accolades and their credentials. So the same way that I do for every guest that we have to join Intentional Conversations podcast, I want to do an official introduction of each of these wonderful individuals. And so first and foremost, I'm going to start with Viola Goodman. As I mentioned before, Anna serves as the NWC Chief of Staff, and she brings 10 years of experience providing high-level support to executive leadership and management with a specialty in DEI in organizations addressing racial equity. Her expertise includes office administration, sales support, web redesign, client relationship management. She resides in North Georgia. So by the way, in case you aren't aware, we are a remote work organization, which is fantastic. We'll talk maybe a little bit about that today as well. So Viola Goodman, again, Chief of Staff. Next, I want to give a proper introduction for Natasha Portskova, who is a DEI manager with the firm. She's been with us for about 6 months, but actually in a couple different capacities. She currently serves as a DEI manager, and she brings to the team years of experience as a marketer and content creator. She decided to pivot from marketing upon realizing her true passion and calling for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we're fortunate to have her. She now works to marry marketing and DEI to maximize impact and change. Originally born and raised in Dallas, Natasha now resides in Boston. And then Lauren Decay, another DEI manager with our team. Lauren's background is in real estate, finance, and accounting, but similar to Natasha, after doing some soul searching, she really discovered her passions lie within diversity, equity, and inclusion. She obtained her certificate of diversity and inclusion from Cornell University in August of 2020 and is excited to put her new knowledge to use, and we're excited to have her. Lauren has a unique perspective around DEI as she has firsthand experiences with lack of inclusion and psychological safety in work environments, and she resides in Atlanta, Georgia. And then last but certainly not least, Lindsay Morton, the newest addition to our team. We're so excited to welcome her as well. She serves as our DEI coordinator, supporting all of the accounts in which we have the honor of providing services to. And while obtaining her BSBA, Lindsay attended the 2017 Greenville Chambers Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Summit. Greenville Chamber is one of our clients, and it's actually one of the summits that we have the pleasure each year of planning for this client. That experience that Lindsay had, it stirred a passion for the DEI space. And so after 9 years of physical therapy practice, Lindsay makes the transition to apply her desire for community outreach and DEI involvement into a career-based journey. And so we're so excited to help her on that journey. And we're already reaping the benefits of her being an asset to the team. So help me to welcome each one of these individuals. Great, fantastic. Hi, Anna. Hi, Lauren. Hi, Natasha.
Hello.
This has been a long time coming. We're so super excited to have each one of you and this day. And actually, Natasha, this was, I believe, your idea. I believe you were the one that said, you know what, let's kick the year off with having everyone to have the opportunity to meet the team.
I did.
And yes. And so thanks for the idea. And I just appreciate the opportunity for people to be able to know more about who we are as an organization and what drives us to do this work. And so I think it's very appropriate to allow each of you to kind of share your intro and your thoughts. Of course, I've given your accolades, but just like we do with all of our guest hosts, I want people to be able to understand your personal story. What is it that has driven you directly to the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion? So what is your why for your connection to this work? And why don't we start with you, Natasha?
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. As Nika said, I come to the world of diversity, equity, and inclusion from a marketing background. I worked in the performing arts for a number of years. And during my time within the arts, one day I just realized while working on our Broadway programs that within our office, there were some major inequities when it came to the lack of people of color within the organization and their lack of leadership. We were all just assistants or coordinators. And I really realized that was, not okay, because all of our staff was almost all was white, and they all had vice president, chief of staff, chief of director, VP. And, for all the people of color, the 6 of us out of the 50, like I said, we were all coordinators and assistants. And it was really that moment that I realized that I joke that I have nothing going for me because I'm not white, I'm not a man, I didn't grow up wealthy, and I'm not straight. So I have all these marginalized identities, and I've been afforded opportunities despite those because I'm white passing, straight passing, looks can also go a long way, all these different things. I really wanted to be that person to come forward and bring other people to the table and give them those opportunities and speak for those individuals who were being silenced. And so the second I realized that this was a career path, I committed myself, I threw myself into the work, I became a student of the work. I reached out to you, Nika, and a million different people to grow my network, because the space is, and I mentioned this recently with, I think, Joe, who's on the call, that for me, it's not so much of a network, because network can have kind of a negative connotation to it. To me, it sounds transactional, but I really like to truly connect with the people and learn from their stories, because, we can't do this work without knowing each person as an individual. And so I spent this year just getting to know people and learning from them and saying, how did you get to where you are? And that's a little bit of why I got into this work.
Thank you so much, Natasha. And what an asset you've been. Let me just say that I have been totally impressed with you, and you've added so much value to the organization. And so thank you for the perspective that you bring. Why don't we go to Anna next? Anna has been with me for the longest. Since almost the very beginning. And Anna, you know how much I value you. I really do. And so I'm so excited for this audience to get to know more about you. Why don't you share your story?
First of all, it feels so weird being on this side. I'm so used to being in the backstage that this is so weird. I feel like DEI just sort of fell, it just fell into my lap. And I've been so lucky and privileged to learn from you, Nika. It's been, I moved to the United States as an immigrant. I was born in the Philippines, and all my life there, I was always told to you can't have dark skin, or you should learn English because that's how you're going to succeed in this world. And don't get dark. Put on. You're supposed to be very well spoken. You're supposed to speak English, and you're supposed to have pale skin. So I grew up thinking that, and then I moved here, and I discovered that all those things I was taught when I was young are actually, in a way, microaggressions. They were so wrong. And that started my journey with trying to discover diversity, equity, inclusion, and why it's so important. And, when I started with Nika, I really didn't know anything. And I've been just really lucky to be learning under her. And I really value the work that we do. And I love being part of this team.
Oh, that's so awesome. And we love having you a part of the team. You've been such a great thought partner for me throughout this process, Anna, and I learn from you every day as well. So thank you. Thank you so much. Let's go to Lauren Decay. How are you today, Lauren?
I'm so happy to be here. So my journey to DE&I isn't necessarily direct. I think when everyone enters the workforce, they come with a base of experiences and how they were brought up that affect the way they show up. And I grew up in an African household. My father was Nigerian. My mother was Cape Verdean. And the gender roles were very stereotypical. Men make all the decisions. Women don't speak. If women even know they're right and speak and the men say they're wrong, they're wrong. And it wasn't because my dad was necessarily purposely sexist, but that's just how things transpired. So psychological safety was something that I experienced. Lack of psychological safety was something I experienced before entering the work world. My mother being Cape Verdean, the first mulattoes ever, race was something that was always very prevalent. I had family members that were white passing and some that were on the darker side. And you saw the division and the use of the words good hair, bad hair. And that had a lot of psychological effects on me as well growing up. So when I entered the work world, I was this insecure girl who thought I was being polite and respectful by not speaking up in meetings, and I was called out on it. And when I shared my personal experiences, I felt that I was punished for my vulnerability rather than lifted up and tried to be helped. I was always just, scolded for not speaking up in meetings and not being assertive enough. And it had the opposite effects. I actually fell more into myself because I didn't feel safe enough to try to work on myself. So I lasted in corporate America, and I was actually laid off on Juneteenth from my last job, which is an issue in itself. But as part of my severance package, I negotiated for them to pay for a soul-searching career course that specialized in African-American women instead of their career course. And it helped me so much in just delving into who I was, what my strengths were, what my passions were. And I had to do a lot of research, to be honest. And I didn't even know that DEI, you could have a career around it. I knew about it, but not that you could have a career around it. So the more I found out about it, the more I researched it, I just kind of fell in love with it. And I knew it was a passion because I can talk on and on for hours about it. When I was in finance, I'm like, how can people talk about the stock market like this? Like, I don't feel passionate. But with DEI, I feel passionate about it. And I love so much that I'm here. And I love so much that Nika gave me the experience to be here today.
Oh, awesome. So your stories, each of your stories are so great. And that's why I wanted this audience to have the benefit of hearing them. I remember when we first connected, it was because I reached out to you after reading a post on LinkedIn. And I was really drawn to your every word. And I just kept saying to myself, I want her to know that I see her. I want her to know that she is seen and she is heard. And so it was really just by happenstance that I said, hey, I would love to be a resource for you. Let's connect. And as we did, it just evolved into now this working relationship that I truly value. But your experiences and your perspective is such a value asset to the work that we do, Lauren, and I appreciate you for that. So last but not least, let's now go to Lindsay. And by the way, I have to just share with each of you that today, I'm not sure where all of you are joining us from. I know it's from all over the globe, but I am based actually in South Carolina, and so is Lindsay. And we've had some inclement weather that has caused the schools to close. And so she got a notice this morning, I think at about 6 a.m. perhaps, that indicated that her sitter was not going to be able to be available. And so I share that to say this is real life. None of this is scripted. We are really just acting out of whatever we have at our disposal to be able to execute while we are moms and while we are professionals, and while we're also maintaining a sense of calm about some of the recent events that are happening. So anyway, I wanted just to put that out there. So Lindsay, please share your story with us, and welcome.
Thank you. If I have to take a step to the side, you all know why. But just to, I grew up very different in the sense of, I grew up where these racial slurs and terms were very normalized in the household. And it took experiences for me to learn that those are not okay and they are not normal, and it's not things that you should, use in the community. And, as I got older and became my own self, I started to realize, this isn't okay. And, I was in high school, and the moment that I was in my first interracial relationship, I noticed how many of my friends kind of turned on me. I remember a specific incident walking down the hallway with my high school boyfriend at the time, and I had people that I considered friends walking behind us, literally chanting racial slurs at us. And I thought to myself, what year is this? Like, I had no idea that this was, something that people were subject to. And it spiraled into, family members saying, you probably shouldn't spend the night at your Black friend's house. You don't want to have mixed children because they won't know if they're white enough for the white people or Black enough for the Black people. So now that we've come full circle, and I do have a child whose father is Black and I am white, it really holds a special place in my heart to learn as much as I can about the DEI space, so that I can instill, a wealth of knowledge into my daughter's life, so that she can carry herself in a way that she can support the DEI space as well in her daily life, so that she starts with the knowledge. I didn't start with that knowledge. And I just feel like that is my mission. And as Nika said, I did attend the Diversity and Inclusion Summit. And that just kind of really stirred that. And Nika and I had been in contact off and on for, some years following that. And I finally just said, okay, Nika, what is out there? What can I do? And it kind of spiraled into a job opportunity that I'm very thankful for. And it's just proven to be the right decision, because it was a leap of faith. I left a job I was very comfortable in. But like I told Nika in the process, if you're comfortable, you're not growing. And so I was ready to take that leap and be able to grow in this space. And I'm very fortunate for this opportunity.
That is so awesome. So thank you. Thank you for sharing your story, Lindsay. And we understand if you have to step away for that precious little girl that you're caring for. But so, I always like to make sure that people recognize that while we all are assembled here as the core team for NWC, this is the group that's in the trenches day in and day out, facilitating service delivery for all of our clients that, again, we are so grateful to be in partnership with. But we do have a number of other consultant partners and other 1099 relationships that help us to be the brand that we are. And so I wanted to acknowledge that, because some of those individuals are actually on this call today, and we're so grateful for their support. So a little bit of information about who we are beyond the surface. Some of you may not be aware that we are a certified minority-owned business, woman-owned business, and we also pride ourselves in having the Forbes Top 10 DEI Trailblazer designation, something that we hold as something that we want to make sure that we uphold in terms of how in which we service and operate. And so And what I want to do at this time, because we are known to make sure that when we convene for our Intentional Conversations podcast, we don't ignore the elephant in the room. We don't ignore what's top of mind for people. And we have experienced some tough past few days, and we're continue to, be under the chaos that is causing a lot of emotions for many of us. And so what I'm referring to, for those of you who may have been asleep the past couple of days, is a situation that occurred at the Capitol this week. And it's disturbing on many levels. And so I just want to give us an opportunity to kind of process that together as a team, as a group, and then also bring in some thoughts and sentiment from our audience. And so let's just start the dialogue. Lauren, Natasha, Lindsay, and Anna, how are you feeling? How are you processing and navigating what you've been exposed to relevant to I'm not going to call it a protest at all, but the white supremacists who were, acting out of domestic terrorists and creating lots of challenges. It certainly continues to divide us. Your thoughts?
I can go first. For me, it was obviously very triggering, angering, and for me, more so, it was hard to see the responses around it, and that on LinkedIn, I'm seeing ex-coworkers and professionals defending it, and always bringing up the left side and what about Black Lives Matter, and to me, it's almost like to the point where I feel like, when do we stop tiptoeing around white supremacy and holding people to higher standards? It's like, we don't have trainings around like, thou shall not kill people or molest children. It's like common sense that being a racist is really bad and it's unacceptable, yet we're tiptoeing it and allowing comments on social media to get by. When is this going to be punished? And it seems overwhelming because people still don't get it. And there's mindsets that, even with diversity training, people that are going through it are writing these comments, and it's alarming, it's disturbing and disheartening. And I'm at a point where I'm just like, when are people going to start to get it?
Yeah, I agree.
I certainly feel the same way as Lauren, that, when are people going to get it? I feel that the individuals who were a part of the attack to the Capitol building on Wednesday, I'm not sure that they ever will get it. It almost seems as a lost cause, but that is, I don't say that this work is more important now than ever, because this work has always been important and will always continue to be important and critical and essential. But using this opportunity to, not lose hope, come together, band, and be stronger. A number of the people on the call today we've already come together and had a conversation and intend to have many conversations about what occurred and how we can prevent things like this from happening, and bringing other individuals who, Nika, you and I were just talking about this, maybe people who are, right now passive and unaware and just need to be educated a little bit on things within this space, learning about white supremacy, and that white supremacy is real, and we're not necessarily attacking an individual because they are white. It's a system, it's a systemic issue. And so educating people to understand, but also meeting them where they are, because if we come at it with a force that feels like attacking someone, we will never be able to change those hearts and minds of individuals if we come at it as attacking. So, urging people to have conversations with people that have different perspectives from you, because if we're just functioning in an echo chamber, it doesn't really do a whole lot of good to, continue to only hear from the same people. So in our space, usually it's people who are for the change and for diversity, equity, and inclusion, but bringing other people into the space that may not agree with you, but having those open dialogues and listening to them is the main thing that I've taken away, to just, move forward, not sit in the events that happened, but figure out how to move forward.
No, that's such good commentary, Natasha. You mentioned, kind of the mental models that we have to have in our mindsets as we're thinking about solutions to be able to course correct and to change people's mindsets and behaviors. And I think that understanding those mental models and where people are gives us greater advantage to be strategic in our approach. As you were talking, one of the things in full transparency that was coming up for me is I agree 100% with everything that you said. But as a practitioner that cares deeply about this space, I too find myself challenged in a sense that I began to feel or question whether or not there is a need to continue to put energy towards those who I believe are pretty set in their ways. But then I have to take a step back and think, well, how do I know that they're fully set? Can people really change? And I grapple with that, to be completely honest. I often feel as though I want my time and energy to go towards either those who have the mental models of I'm aware, but I just don't know how to engage so I can help them on that journey, or either I'm aware, but I'm passive because I see it as someone else's responsibility. So I then can say, no, it's part of your responsibility too. But for those that have made a deliberate decision to practice a life of bigotry, and I have a hard time with that sometimes, but, I do agree that some people can change, but I would rather put so much energy towards the individuals that I believe have the influence and the will and the drive, if they're just provided the opportunities and greater, deeper knowledge and skill sets to be able to facilitate this work, because there's hope there, there's some resemblance of hope there. But anyway, it's tough, but I appreciate your thoughts so much. Anna and Lindsay, any thoughts?
I think to piggyback off of what you said, I think individuals need to be willing to unlearn so that they can relearn. I heard that from someone else, so I won't take credit for that. I can't remember the speaker who said that, but that really spoke to me, being willing to unlearn. And I think that's the disconnect, is that individuals are not willing to unlearn. And I think that a lot of times these individuals aren't even sure where their standpoint comes from. It's just kind of ingrained with their upbringing. So I think that's very important to unlearn so you can relearn.
Yeah, sometimes part of the best thing we can do is, to your point, unlearn misinformation. I think oftentimes we act from a place of perceptions or what we think is the reality and the lived experiences of others. And that certainly can keep us from really being called to action in a way that is effective.
And I also think for people like myself, it's important to understand that, this might not be, whatever's going on, whatever you're witnessing might not be your fault, but it's going to be part of your responsibility to move forward from this and, assist with making the change.
Absolutely.
And I think you mentioned something a little bit, Lindsay, about just exposure. So I went to school in Iowa, and I remember one of my friends brought me over to like a bonfire, and within the group, all the people basically said they'd never met any person that wasn't white. They were all white with blonde hair, blue eyes. That was just a side note. But while we were talking, they were saying, one of them said, oh, so-and-so goes to the community college with the black kids. That one's bad. And because they'd never, up until going to college, I guess, they never experienced or met anyone that was not like them, they automatically created these biases, and they put walls up and labeled them as bad, as opposed to the white group of friends they had, which is good. And a number of my friends in college said, you're the first non-white person I've ever met, or you're one of 5 people of color I'm friends with, which I think they meant as a compliment. I'm not exactly sure. I didn't take it as such. I said, that's kind of an issue. But, reaching out to people when people kind of live in these silos and they're unexposed to the outside world, it's a little bit difficult for them to understand the issues and the things other people face. So, putting yourself out there and trying to put yourself in situations. I will say, in that situation, I didn't feel comfortable coming out and saying something because I was the minority in that situation. So obviously we want to be safe when we speak out. But, reaching out to people is imperative, and in whatever way we can.
Right. Absolutely. Reaching out, building those relationships so that hopefully those relationships can give us the influence we need to help people to move beyond where they currently could be if it's compromising the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So, Lauren and Ann, I mentioned at the beginning in your bios that both of you are based in Georgia. And so what's the climate like being, of course, in a state where, there's been so much focus on what's going to happen of late as you think about the events that have transpired over the past couple
Nika,
days?
it's interesting you say that because after Wednesday, I've been observing all my neighbors like, okay, when are they going to take their sign down? Like, this is it, right? This was the event that's convinced them that it's time. How can you continue supporting this person or this movement when that just happened? Surely we all can agree. And I keep waiting, and some of them have, and some of them have not. And to Natasha's point about building relationships, I live in a county in North Georgia. Lauren, I think I mentioned this to you. I live in a county in North Georgia where it's 14% Democratic. So it's a very red county. And I was actually, when I went out to vote, I was kind of hiding who I was. I felt so naked, like, oh, this woman is a person of color. Surely she's voting blue. And I felt, and I don't know if it was me and my paranoia, but I felt very worried. And I was thinking, oh, now that I'm Facebook friends with my kids' teachers and social media, will they treat him differently because of our beliefs that racial equality is important, that discrimination is a bad thing, that I don't necessarily relate with, I don't support the past administration. So it's been a challenging time for me living. I feel like we're the only, for those who don't know, I mentioned earlier, I'm Filipina, my husband's Jewish. So our son is mixed. He's half Filipino and half Jewish, and we live in a very Christian, very white, very red county. And but to Natasha's point about building relationships, I don't want to feel like, I don't want to other myself, or I don't want to be quiet and not say anything. Instead, I seek to build those relationships. I brought honey to my neighbor that would not take down his sign, and just ask him how he is. I think it starts there. Like Natasha said, some people just haven't been exposed, and I'm hoping that my story or my kid's story, I hope it changes hearts and then minds. I'll turn it over to Lauren.
So I actually live in the city of Atlanta, which is basically Democratic, and I've formed a community of people that are very like-minded. Coming from more diverse in Atlanta than it was in New Jersey. I haven't been back. I'm in North Carolina right now. As the team knows, I was in Delaware for a funeral, but I don't know what the general climate is there. I'd imagine in the city of Atlanta, people are feeling the same way I do. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm looking at some of the comments in the chat. And by the way, we love this level of engagement. So continue to use the chat to create community for each of us. But, Mark is bringing up the need for us to really dig deep to find that empathy, that compassion. And even for those that are not on our side in different spheres of life. I think that at some point in time, it certainly is going to behoove us to make sure that we are being thoughtful about, we all are coexisting. As I think about all the people that were at the Capitol, those individuals are returning back to their posts, and their posts are in organizations as coworkers, as teachers, as educators, as servicemen and women. And that's the reality. So it may feel like that's a group of people that's kind of outside and separate from us, but they're not. And I think for me, that's what's the most unsettling. And it's just, it was really disheartening. I felt as though with the new year beginning, not as though I was totally oblivious to the fact that all our troubles were going to go away just because we moved into a new year. But, we always find this sense of being hopeful about the new year, new beginnings and change. And so for this to occur, I felt like in the beginning, it was quite a setback. But I really, truly believe that this is going to work to our favor. And when I say our favor, I mean all of those that are in this space of wanting to see us really completely dismantle systemic racism and emerge stronger. I am seeing now talks of how a lot of, executives are taking notice of who were out there, and there have been some firings, I'm taking notice of people continuing to speak out. And so I think that the more opportunity people are given to show themselves, we need to believe them and then to act accordingly. So I'm trying to find some level of silver lining and hope, because I think that really hope is all we have, for these types of situations. I'm reminded of Bryan Stevenson, who is the author of Just Mercy. And he talks about, in order to be able to solve for inequalities and inequities, there's several things we have to do. Get close to the problem, be willing to be uncomfortable, change the narrative. And then the last one is we have to maintain hope. If we aren't hopeful that there can be a change, then we are not going to be as willing to be called to action and to continue to keep trying. And so for me, and NWC, I know that each of you are also with me on this. The evening that a lot of this occurred, I sent a note to the team, and it was really an article, and it talked about this whole subject of hope. And I'm going to ask Natasha, one of my teammates, if you can, to place it into the link, or to the chat room rather. But it was an article in New York Times, and one of the quotes in this article was this, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit further. Contrary to microaggressions, which are small but hurtful and accumulative, comments or actions that show insensitivity towards persons who are not in the white privilege camp, microaggressions are small actions that communicate respect. And so as the article was really encouraging us to dig deep, to remain hopeful during times of despair, it highlighted microaggressions, which was the first time that I had heard that term. I mean, we all hear about microaggressions quite often. And by the way, there's nothing micro about microaggressions, but it amplified the need for us to change the narrative, as Bryan Stevenson again has encouraged us to do, to instead of talking about microaggressions so often, let's also make sure that we're giving a level of attention to microprogressions, which are just those small steps that allows us to maintain that hope. So I just want to ask each of you, and I'm going to invite our community as well, to place into the chat, what are maybe one or two microprogressions? And you could also define it as maybe some ways of taking care of self so that you continue to fight the good fight. But what are some of those microprogressions that helps to keep us on the course of the work that we're doing that's so critically important? And I would love for my team to answer that.
I can jump in here. In the article, it mentions one that I think is a great example. I also love the idea of microprogressions as opposed to microaggressions. But the example is, if you find yourself in a meeting or a situation where you feel compelled to interrupt, potentially the only woman in the room or the only person of color in the room, and you feel like you are going to interrupt and talk over them, stop, think about it, and then don't do it. Just stay silent and let that individual finish out their thought so that we're not taking over their space and silencing them. So that's one from the article that I personally loved.
Awesome.
Does it count for as a microprogression if I'm constantly educating my 4-year-old son on on race and gender and why it's okay to cry? I feel like I'm trying to raise my 4-year-old son to understand that there is color. I don't want him to, I'm not going to say, oh, I'm raising my son to not see color, because that is so not okay. I want him to see color and I want him to celebrate it. I want him to be comfortable wearing the color pink if he wants to. I want him to ask for permission. And I feel like that's how I feel towards, that's how I practice microprogressions. I feel like I'm doing a little bit of a difference that way.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's not a little bit of a difference. I think it's a significant difference. And just imagine all of us who are parents, if we were to take on that same mentality and we're passing down that level of learning and exposure, how better the world would be. So Anna, no, Isaac is definitely in good hands with you, providing all of that guidance. And so while the other colleagues may be thinking about a micro progression they wish to share, I want to bring in some of the commentary from each of you in this community. So Yvonne says that community conversations is a micro progression. Absolutely it is. And, you know, just similar to what we're doing today, it can be one-on-one and very interpersonal, or it also can be in just group conversations. We have to normalize these conversations because ignoring them is not going to make the issues go away. And so Justin Allen says to start talking about DEI at work. Yes, we need to make sure we amplify the volume on the importance and the necessity of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Mark shares that microprogression is asking people how they're doing and genuinely listening to their response. How about that? Don't just ask and walk off, but really be interested in how they're doing. That's a big one. And it's so simple, but it's so important. It really causes people to feel seen, valued, and heard. And that can make all the difference in the world. Ayana Cummings says valuing others and expressing appreciation for their contributions. Absolutely. Positive, affirmations are really something that a lot of people gravitate to. So I love that idea as well. Okay, there's others out there too. So make sure you're checking out the chat. Lauren and Lindsay.
Oh, you can go ahead.
I think a good one for yourself is to take time to yourself, especially working in the DEI space, because it can get heavy. And I think it's important that you take, even if it's just 5 minutes to yourself, to just reflect and kind of wind down and just totally decompress so that you can bring your full A game, when you are working in this space. And just to reference the article again, I've got it pulled up here. It states that, while maintaining hope while facing challenges pushes that emotional and physical resilience, but giving into that hopelessness and believing you're powerless drives depression. So I really think that taking that time to yourself so that you can kind of reboot and be ready is super important.
No, I agree.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
For me, I would say using LinkedIn to illustrate experiences that I've gone through and what could have made them better as I experienced a lot of psychological insafety, exclusion in the workplace. It's actually kind of encouraged old coworkers I've had to come forward and have conversations with me on the telephone. And I felt that way too. Like, how can I solve this issue or bring up ideas to our D&I council? My best friend who's in the chat, Lauren Spiegel, I said, I just see she joined several BRGs. And reach out to friends, ask how they're feeling. I know that she's inspired as well by some of our conversations. So to me, those are things that put a smile on my face, even though we still have a long way to go.
Oh, that's so awesome. Okay, so I feel like we can talk about this all day, but I want to make sure that we also get to some of the things that we're looking forward to in 2021 and maybe even some reflections on some impressionable moments from 2020. So why don't we start there with impressionable moments? And maybe specifically, let's start with Intentional Conversations VodCast. And so we launched that in 2020. I don't know how many sessions we've had so far. We've had weekly sessions since, I believe, March or April of 2020, and the audience continues to grow. But as you think back, for those of you who've been exposed, I'm going to ask the audience as well as our team. And I know that some teammates have not been with us for the duration of that time, but maybe you've been exposed to some of the intentional conversation replays. Is there one that stands out to you the most? And if so, who is that and why? In terms of our guests. And I would like the audience to do the same. If you've been joining us, then place into the chat the name of maybe the guest, or maybe it was the content. Maybe you don't remember the name of the guest, but you remember the content. And it will be interesting for us to just kind of look back and reflect on that.
For me, Tim Pecoraro was one of my favorites from last year. It was just, he dropped a lot of knowledge in the conversation. He was very authentic. He talked about not trying to change people because people, if you go in thinking this is my project and I'm going to redo them, it's not going to work that way. And loving people and caring for people. And that was one of my favorites.
Oh, that's great. We're actually going to place into the chat the names as well. So Natasha, if you could put that into the chat, because again, the replays are all out there. Tim Pecoraro was amazing. Yes, I remember that one very fondly as well. Thank you, Natasha. I'm seeing Lily also. Lily's saying, yes, she was amazing. That's another one. Dr. Tracy Benson was another really good one as well. So Mauricio mentioned that Tim was also his favorite. So Natasha, is there one that stands out to you? I mean, not Natasha, Anna. I'm looking at Natasha, but I'm
so many
Anna
stand out to me,
now.
but I'm not even sure if it's for the right reasons. Like I think about, I don't remember who the guest speaker was when Natasha and I were bombarded by the Zoom bombers. That to me was so unforgettable because we were. And I know a lot of the people in our audience witnessed that. I remember how sweet everyone was sending us follow-up messages, telling us not to feel bad. Anita is memorable to me because she was our very first one. Nika, do you remember?
Absolutely, I do. She was great. She kicked us off and we haven't looked back. Yeah. But so you just reminded me that, yes, we did have some Zoom bombers, which is why we ended up transitioning to Hopin. But, someone told me early in my career that you will know that you are effective when people start to sabotage your work. Right. And I've held true to that because, again, each of us, you all know I talk about this a lot. I have such deep convictions about this work that I'm not willing just to be surface with it. We have to really pull back all the layers, get to the crux of the matter and really solve for the root causes of issues that are compromising inclusion and equity. And so that day I was quite flustered. I really was. And then I got to the point where we were able to kind of navigate it a bit, but then it got to the point where it was just way too intrusive that I just ended it. I ended it. And I said to the audience that I'm not going to subject you to the ignorance of people that, want to continue to just show forth evil. And so we ended it, and then we ended up switching, and we haven't looked back. And so anyway, yes, you all were so kind. For those of you who may have been on those sessions and you remember that, you really fueled us with hope by just, expressing your thoughts of standing in solidarity.
Also, Nika, I want to point out,
I
think it was Joy said that Carlo was one of her favorites.
Okay, so Joy Klingskells. So by the way, I think that's partial because for those of you who don't know the name Joy Klingskells, maybe you're not in my inner circle, but that is my sister. And so she's saying that she enjoyed when we had Carlo White, who was my husband, on the show. We did. We had my husband and we had my daughter. That's another really impressionable one from an Intentional Conversations podcast as well. I had them on, not just because they're my family, but more so because they have such unique experiences in terms of how in which they've navigated DEI, particularly around, the events of 2020. And so if that's of interest to you, it's also a part of the replay that you can check out. And I do highly encourage it. So, okay. So we have like 10 minutes left. I cannot believe this hour has gone by so fast, but we said that what happened, right? We did. Let's talk about what's on the horizon for NWC in 2021. There's several things. So let's share with this community what we have up our sleeves that they can look forward to. Who would like to start?
I'm happy to jump in. Well, I'm very much looking forward to continuing intentional conversations here in 2021. I'm looking forward to, bringing more members of this team into the fold. So being able to hear from all of us, and I look forward to interacting with all of you more throughout this year. We also have, if you are on our email list, we have weekly emails now that will be coming to your inbox every week that have DEI tips, some articles to read, our Inclusion Uncomplicated, so that you have, digestible content you can use to educate yourself every single week, which I'm really looking forward to. So those are just a couple.
No, that is awesome. We've also had a lot of talk at our recent retreat about establishing another book club or two for this year. We did one last year. Some of you in this community may have been a part of it, but Minda Harts, we used her book called The Memo, What Women of Color Need to Know to Secure a Seat at the Table. And there were 3 separate sessions. And the great thing about it is that those discussions were led in part by Minda. And it was really great for the learning. And so I think as we continue to find opportunities for community-wide learning, which is something that's really important to us as a team, we're going to be introducing some new books, 2 separate books for at least 2 separate book clubs that we can engage the broader audience on. So I look forward to that. So if you have book recommendations that can help, steer the learning around diversity, equity, and inclusion, we have a short list that we started, but we're continuing to vet because there's so many great ones right now. Resources abound around this topic. Then please place those into the chat, and we would love to be able to put them into the consideration set. So what else do we have on the horizon? Is there anything that I have not talked about relevant to what we were planning for and anticipating?
Well,
for
I know
2021?
we talked about, just a little bit of a tease, but we are planning. This last year, so many people entered the DE&I force, and especially companies that, they have one individual. And so, it may not be till later in the year, but we're working on creating some sort of conference or summit to continue to educate those people and make sure that they have the tools they need.
Yes, thank you for that reminder, Natasha. And I so look forward to that. So part of our service offerings is that we create these learning and development experiences, whether it's a summit or a conference for different clients that we serve. But we also want to create some signature learning and development experiences that we can host for the community. And so we're certainly continuing to develop that idea. So we look forward to sharing more with you as we get a bit more details solidified. But I look forward to that. And you're right. There are probably a number of people even in this community that are relatively new to the space, or maybe you're in transition and you're looking to try to get into the space. We've had a lot of people that have connected with us just because of that reason. And so we would love to engage you and be a resource as best as we can. So we have maybe about 8 minutes left. I encourage any of you that are with us today to drop your questions into the chat so we can engage with you.
We do have
so
a
grateful
few,
that you're
Nika.
here with us today.
I've dropped them.
Okay, great.
So
Please.
I'll read from the most recent. We had one that said, how do we get whites comfortable with identifying and not taking offense to white privilege, as was demonstrated in the case of the terrorist attack this week? I've observed on social media whites feeling attacked when minorities are calling out the white privilege of the terrorist attack. How can we convey that they aren't being associated with the terrorists, but that they share the same privilege as them?
Well, I think it's first and foremost about understanding privilege, and I certainly want to hear any other remarks from my colleagues, but it's about understanding what privilege is. It doesn't mean that you haven't had any hardships, and then if we put it specifically in context of white privilege, you definitely can still have white privilege, but maybe grew up poor or other challenges. It just means that those challenges are not a result of the color of your skin. And that's really important distinction as we talk about privilege in general, in the broad sense, versus white privilege. I often say that we all probably, if we take inventory of our lives, may be able to find areas where we have a source of power and privilege. I often say that I grew up in a home with 2 parents. I grew up in a home where I had enough. I was taken care of, and it had nothing to do with me. It was just the cards that I was dealt. I also think there's an opportunity with us being careful about how the language matters. And so for instance, I'm noticing that as people are becoming, having a deeper appetite for conversations around dismantling systemic racism, when you call something out as being racist, people perceive that you're calling them a racist. And being a racist is not about who you are. It's more about what you do. So you could be a really good intended person, but you may have some type of action or behavior that definitely is rooted in racism. And it's about calling that in and bringing it to people's attention so that hopefully they are willing to course correct. So that's what I would offer. Anything else comes to mind for any of you?
Oh, Lauren, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, yeah, I completely agree, Nika. I also think that we have to just start thinking about things that are fact. And if you accept things as being a fact, it's easier to absorb sometimes. So, for example, even me being a light-skinned Black woman, there's some privilege to that. And if I go to Nigeria, maybe because of the colorism there, they might say like, oh, she's so pretty and she can get more things than me, but I'm in the United States and I'm Black and I have less privilege than I would somewhere else. So a part of privilege is the circumstance you're in, and you have to accept it as a fact in order to understand it and then take the next steps to say, how can I use my privilege to help others?
Love that.
Do
you want to take another question? Or
I was just going to add in real quick on that,
question?
It's about that intent versus impact, which Nika mentioned. If someone said, well, I was well-intended, that doesn't dissolve you of the impact. It's important to remember that it's all about the impact and how someone took something. And so it's also imperative to remember that being a racist isn't this good, bad binary. Just because someone is a racist doesn't necessarily mean that they're a bad person per se, but just because someone isn't a racist doesn't mean that they're a good person. And we have to think about, it's all about actions. And, if someone were to call you a racist, that's not where the conversation should end. That is a point to realize, okay, ask questions. What did I do that was wrong? How can I move forward from this? If I was being the perpetrator and I didn't intend to do so, you should want to learn from that interaction. So intent versus impact.
No, that's so important. We amplify that as a team all of the time. And so I appreciate you giving us a chance to emphasize it even more. So I see another question. It's really about, what's your biggest goal for 2021? What is our biggest goal for 2021, team? We have lots of goals.
I like Natasha's
what would you say our biggest goal is?
Mantra for NWC. And I still think it's a goal for 2021. Grow better.
Grow better. Yes, yes. And so Natasha brought that language to the team, and we all just gravitated to it. And so, yeah, our biggest goal is to grow better. And for us, what that looks like is continue having impact, across many different audiences and different individuals with the work that we do, to continue to push ourselves to have strong integrity of allegiance to the core of the work. And for us, again, that's not about being surface with it. It's about really driving towards impact, where we are really encouraging and guiding clients and individuals through looking at systems, policies, procedures, and not just seeing this work as activity. We also have some tremendous goals as it relates to increasing our influence by adding on new clients. And so, by the way, if you're looking for DEI services, we would love to be in your consideration set. We are full service, and we would love to be able to talk with you about that. The growth for us over the year has been tremendous. We are so grateful to be able to do work that we really are passionate about. And to know that it's also helping to support our families. That is so rewarding. I don't take it lightly that each of you as my colleagues have decided to join forces with me to be a part of the team, just like I don't take it lightly when clients will entrust us and bet on us to help them with their journey. And we don't take it lightly that each of you decide week after week to spend time with us, to learn with and from us. And we're just so grateful. So any parting remarks before I kind of close out with a message on hope, really briefly? Any thoughts from my team? Okay. Oh, I see baby girl is there.
Little Leilani.
She almost made it.
Okay.
I'm so excited for the conversations to come this year. So thank you everyone for being a part today.
No, absolutely. I echo those sentiments. We are truly grateful. You will receive an email later today, which will have a link to the replay. Certainly feel free to share it if you found value in the conversations. And we look forward to seeing you at future Intentional Conversation VodCast. And I just want to leave you with this message. No matter how you are viewing what has taken place recently, or even as you reflect back on how tough 2020 was, I want you to remember this. The battle for inclusion is not over trying to turn white supremacy into DEI supporters. It is a battle for the American hearts and minds that are in the middle to support opportunity rather than oppression. So be encouraged with me that the events at the Capitol will continue to add fuel to the movement in a positive way. I truly believe that. It once again shocked the conscience of America, and every time America's conscience is shocked, there is progress. We've seen that. Be encouraged, because this will embolden corporations, organizations, and leaders to speak out and act even more boldly to help change systems of oppression in their companies and in our country. This has emboldened our leaders. That situation, it has emboldened our leaders to be even more clear and forceful in their language. And I think we soon will see through legislation. Last, take care to not let people who agree with what happened at the Capitol dominate your thinking. We know we have opposition. Simply take note and put those people that agree with storming the Capitol in opposition category. Move on. We have work to do, and after the events this week, we will find we will have more support to get this important work done. And I'm ready, and I'm hoping you are too. Thank you all so very much. Enjoy your weekend, and we hope to see you next Friday for Intentional Conversations VodCast. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you all.